Here's Brody Brazil.
Let me pivot here because the other $900 million is set aside if a Major League Baseball team comes to the state of Utah. Now, that's the Larry H. Miller Group, and to your point, they're all about Daybreak and building that new stadium and that development for the Bees and obviously the community down there. But the stadium that they would build would be right next to the Fair Park, so what, between downtown and the airport, is that correct?
It is directly between the airport and downtown. It's I-15 is kind of your divider, right?
Yeah.
Major interstate, east side, downtown Salt Lake City, Avenues area, state capitol, pushing up towards the hillside. West side is a street called North Temple, as you can imagine. Use the temple as a reference.
Sure.
Come all the way to the airport. It's right along in line with the airport. There's public transportation there already with a light rail, and it goes through a side of town that's historically been a little tough for businesses to survive. There's the Utah State Fair Park there, which is still kind of a cool spot. They do music festivals and such there and other community events. The land it's going to be on, which they coined it the Power District, is owned by Rocky Mountain Power, which of course is a power supplier for electricity here in Utah. So there's all this partnership going on, and they broke ground on that with shovels in the ground for a good photo op. Gosh, feels like more than a year ago now. The difference between that 900 and the 900 we're talking about here is that $900 is purely that area that's going to be spent and then reinvested into this area, comparison to that sales tax situation for all of Salt Lake City's residents.
Right.
On the other side. It's a different configuration, but the same amount of money for what the legislature did.
Does that make sense? Absolutely. Absolutely. The $900 million, though, it's sitting there right now. Just like it was sitting there when the NHL said, we've got the Coyotes, we've got money over here in Utah. Is this kind of a leverage situation for Salt Lake City? And I'm wondering, considering there are teams out there like the Oakland, soon to be Sacramento version of the A's, or the Tampa Bay Rays, who are a little bit unsettled. The Chicago White Sox are apparently a little bit unsettled. Is this Utah's plan or strategy to just kind of be ready? And you can say you want an expansion team like the Smith Group did back in the day, but you're willing to take, because that site is apparently shovel ready, you're willing to take an existing team if that's also the case. Does this seem like history could repeat itself for Utah?
Yes, absolutely. I think they'll take whatever they can get, whether it is expansion, relocation, hybrid deal a la NHL, right? Like they have the building blocks in play right now with money, financial investment, obviously from the legislature, the Larry H. Miller Group, which has already committed, what was the number, $3 billion or whatever their own number was committed to. This Fair Park redevelopment, which they want to do a river walk and all these things around the ballpark, which those renderings look cool too, because renderings are made to look cool. It's the whole point. If you're a sports fan, you go, oh, new shiny object. And I think that this is still their way of saying, hey, Rob Manfred, hey, we're here. We've got this plot of land, a stone's throw from downtown, a stone's throw from, by the way, virtually a brand new airport, which is a major Delta hub here in the Intermountain West that has been under construction, has grown so much, even the last 5 years that I've been here. It's easy to get to Salt Lake. It's not hard, especially from California. There's every LA airport has direct flights multiple times a day here. So if you think about the accessibility to where that plot is, to public transportation, the airport, downtown, new hotels that have gone up in the area around the Delta Center, brand new Hyatt downtown in the last year or two. I mean, it's a shovel-ready place. And I think that's all part of the big plan.
So going back to February, March, when I saw those billboards pop up from the Larry H. Miller Group saying that Utah wants the A's.
Yeah.
Now, I need you to finish that sentence for me. Utah wanted the A's. Utah still wants the A's. Utah wants the A's temporarily until they go to Las Vegas. Utah wants the A's permanently. What exactly do you think that meant?
Utah wants the idea of the A's, perhaps.
But not the actual A's?
I don't know. I don't know if, well, that was based on temporary, right? The whole goal was to,
it was a different time.
We've got this new enticing ballpark we're building. Yeah, it doesn't have major league capacity, but it has capacity. It's new, it's cool, it's Why wouldn't you want to play Major League Baseball, regardless of the capacity, in this brand new stadium that can still probably pack the place? I think that was the pitch. I don't think it was, hey, we want Major League Baseball here forever. We also want the A's. I don't think that's the case, which we now know is not going to happen unless something dramatically changes, which I would doubt.
Well, you never know. It's a bridge. Sacramento is a bridge from Oakland to what they're planning.
Good for Sacktown, by the way. That should be great. Good for them.
I got to tell you, from the Northern California perspective, there are a lot of dynamics going on surrounding that. That's probably the best way to put it. I guess the point is it's a bridge. It's kind of like when the Arizona Coyotes went from a permanent NHL caliber arena in Glendale to the temporary spot in Tempe, but they didn't have the next spot lined up. And it turns out, as of today, they still don't have the next spot lined up, and they ran out of time with the league. I'm just saying that Sacramento is the next thing, but the bridge is not fully built out yet, at least right now, to Las Vegas. And that kind of just brings my curiosity around this. I think Utah still is keeping a very close eye on all this. That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah.
I think they, keeping the conversation and dialogue open seems like an obvious scenario.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily need this one of the two potential coveted spots of expansion for Major League Baseball,
Right.
or there's another place that needs a good home. It's like, being the foster parent, right? Like we'll take them because we should,
Right.
and it's the right thing to do if we're in this situation.
Yeah.
And I think that makes total sense, because whether it's the A's or not, they still just want Major League Baseball here. Did they want? It's a different dynamic than the NHL, because we wanted the NHL here years ago, but there was no financial backing. There was no major promise. There was no grassroots, or whatever you want to call it, movement to make that happen. Very different Major League Baseball than NHL. Just kind of funny that the NHL happened so much quicker because of the situation and how the cards were drawn compared to Major League Baseball, which, by the way, still could never happen. I lived in Oregon when the Portland Diamond Project began.
Oh, yeah.
It originated. I lived in Medford, Southern Oregon, basically a forgotten city against the true Northern California. And it was interesting because Dale Murphy was a part of the Portland Diamond Project. Dale Murphy lives in Utah. Dale Murphy's a part of the Utah push.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how that changed over time. Maybe Portland is still a target, city with character, city with the Portland Pickles, whereas the Major League Baseball conversation is much newer here in Utah, but perhaps the pitch is that much more compelling, Brody, because of the financial interest, because of the long-term, family dynamic of ownership from the state's most successful sports franchise, known as the Utah Jazz, with the Miller Group. I think if you're the MLB and you're looking at Utah, you go, not a bad fit. How do we do it?
Well, look how the Jazz got to Utah. Jazz is from New Orleans. Like actual Jazz and the Jazz. I'm going to call them the Coyotes. Get it? Coyotes? Anyway, never mind. They're from Arizona. Yeah, I know. It's bad. From Arizona. And I guess how maybe Utah could import a baseball team might be the same way by taking it from somewhere else. And that brings me to the very last thing here. And I appreciate this has been such a good conversation. I think the state of Utah, if I'm correct, population 3 million, something like that. Higher? 4 million? 5 million? Okay. And it's
4 and change as of last census, right?
And it's
constantly growing.
And it's growing. So let's make that obvious. I only say this in a sense of, to your point earlier, all of this is happening so quick, and the Jazz have done so well for so long. Now you're throwing in, hey, competition in the winter with the NHL, competition in the summer with Major League Baseball, hypothetically and potentially. Is there any worry that Utah would be growing just a little bit too fast for maybe its own rate of growth?
Well, it already is when you look at the housing market. But when you look at sports, there was that concern. And actually, going back to where I work at a local news station, we have done coverage on this. Is there an oversaturation or overcapacity of sport in Utah, even as we stand today with the NHL and no Major League Baseball? Think of this, surprising amount of Division I athletics from St. George, Utah, with Utah Tech, Southern Utah University, going north, BYU, Utah Valley University, University of Utah, Weber State, USU. I just went up straight up I-15 there. Those are all Division I programs.
Yeah.
Those have their own fans. And we're not even talking about professional. We're talking about just a saturation of high-level sports that are already here, which is interesting when you look at it, because I always think of a place like Vegas, which has just ballooned in professional sport interest and success, mind you, with that moving there. I just think it's a different animal here in Utah than just one city of Vegas versus what we're doing here in this state, because of the fact that it's one giant state spread out. But the idea is still, we love sport.
Yeah.
We want more. And I'm not saying everybody feels that way. I'm saying that's the message and the push. Could it be oversaturated as we sit here right now, just with the NHL? Absolutely. But there's a surprising amount of money here too.
Yeah.
And money has its way of making a lot of influential changes, as you know, especially in the world of sport. Utah, I don't know if a place has grown like Utah in the last decade, not in just the amount of people, but in the amount of sport-related changes, whether it be a level up from BYU, University of Utah, whether it be let's bring the Olympics back here, by the way, in a decade, and how does the downtown area look now in 2024 to compared to where we welcome the rest of the world for the Winter Games, where we're going to do Big Air, the 2018 newest sport in the Winter Olympics, in downtown Salt Lake City. How is that revitalization zone going to look as we have the world viewing Utah?